All right, all right. So excited to be here with you, the one and only Amanda Miller Littlejohn.
The one and only. The she with many names.
You with many names. Thank you all for attending this beautiful, beautiful session. Pivot your brand with purpose. All the preparation that we're going to need for 2025. We I can give you the bio, but before I give you the bio, I just have to give everybody the note. Amanda and I go way, way, way back in time. And I can only think about it in the context of a platform that exists by a different name now. We connected via Twitter.
We did.
And in the early days, when people were just basically meeting up with people all across the city, at least in the DC context, and we were very happy to meet people who had similar interests that were trying to navigate this PR slash social media slash brand space. How do you engage for yourselves? And really, the community is what we were building, and those relationships have lasted to today. And it's been such an amazing thing to see how everybody from the community has grown and developed. But great to still have relationships that you hold dear, and I hold this one very dear with you. So I'm happy you're here today.
I'm happy to be here, James, and you are literally one of the biggest gifts that bird app gave me. So it's like, we can sit up here and say, we're leaving, we hate it. But like I'm grateful to it for what it was then at that time because yeah, you've been so much over my career journey. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And now, for the folks that are not familiar with Amanda, I do have to read because she has many, many receipts.
Oh,
And Amanda Miller Littlejohn is an executive coach and personal brand strategist for high achieving midlife professionals who want to navigate work and life without burnout. She
yes.
explores the mental challenges and opportunities of midlife, including our approach to rest, purpose, and ambition. She's currently reporting from the front lines of the Rest Revolution, her new book that is going to go to full release tomorrow. So there's plenty of time for people who want to do pre-orders today. Please do check out the link. There'll be links provided. I hope that everybody enjoys the conversation and takes away something that you can use to think about how you can set yourself up for success in 2025. But one little quick note, all of that success starts with the things that you're setting up for yourself now. And we're going to get into that with some of the conversation. So without further ado, let's officially kick off.
Let's kick off. But question, James, are people able to chime in and ask questions and drop comments on LinkedIn? Because I know we're streaming
Yes.
there.
Yes. So people should be able to ask any questions that you have there, and we'll do our best to check in throughout the time and make sure that
Yeah.
we're able to do that. If we aren't able to get to everybody's questions, we will be able to follow up a little bit afterwards with any key themes. But honest to goodness, a lot of what we're going to talk about here, these are just a few of the nuggets that are available in the book. So I have my pre-orders already set. I hope you all get yours. But I wanted to start out talking about burnout specifically, Amanda.
Mhm.
And one of the things that is very important that we have to navigate and rationalize is the fact that burnout just is something so many professionals face. It's often hard to think about it. It's hard to know when it's time to make that change. But maybe you can shed some light on what some of the signs are that burnout might be signaling the need for a career pivot.
That's a great question, James. I think that whenever you feel yourself veering in kind of an unfamiliar, energetic direction, especially around your career, that may be a sign of burnout. So, like for me, James, I know that, both of us are very creative, right? We love to create content, we love to discuss ideas and brainstorm new approaches. And I think if we ever should find ourselves in a place where the ideas aren't coming, the words aren't flowing, the new solutions aren't popping up, we're just kind of like, huh, you know, that's a sign to really check in to see what's going on
Mhm.
with yourself. And so for me, creativity is one of the hallmarks of my personality, both personally and professionally. Like my professional identity is really built upon how I have been able to come up with creative solutions for clients, come up with creative language for, projects. And think of creative ways to help people solve problems. So whenever I am not able to brainstorm and get excited about creativity, that's a sign for me to check in. So whatever that is for you, I think that's the place to start. Like, what are the things that if I'm getting irritated, and I usually love it when people ask me questions and suddenly I don't want anyone to ask me a question. It's like, okay, what's going on, right? So whatever it is for you, when you find yourself changing and shifting and no longer able to really access that energy from your work that you used to be able to access, then that may be a sign you're headed towards burnout. Not to mention just your workload is insane and you can't necessarily keep up with it. But that's another issue, because I think too often, and not to go too far on question one, a lot of times we think that burnout is caused simply by this abundance of work. We have way too much work. That's just one part of it. Yes, the external part is I have too much work. But the internal part is I'm not in alignment with the work that I'm doing. I'm not in alignment with the other ways I'm spending my time and energy, maybe outside of work. And so I'm not giving myself access to the energy generating, activities, projects, relationships, hobbies that can help me stay balanced and out of burnout. So yes, overwork, but also, how are you playing? Are you doing your hobbies? Are you recording your podcast? Are you hanging out with your friends? Are you giving yourself room for all the things that make you human?
I mean, and that's the key piece of it, right? So when you start to think about those things and you start to move through it, I think that's naturally this tension that will come up that I've experienced in the past, that I experience sometimes today. And it's this interest or tension between what you've done and your hobbies and the idea of ambition. And so in the Rest Revolution, you talk about redefining ambition. And so it'd probably be good for us to start with how you define it to begin with. So, what does ambition mean in the context of a healthy, balanced life? And how can we align it more closely with the values that we hold?
So, I would define ambition as that driving force that pushes you to achieve your purpose. And I just came up with that in the moment. So I hope somebody got that. That was good. But one of the things I really talk about a lot in the book, I think it's chapter 9 or 10, is really right sizing your ambition. So if you think about, for many people, the career path that they went down maybe after college or early in their professional journey, maybe it was something that had been suggested or recommended to them by the people who knew them and loved them and kind of knew of their aptitudes for specific subjects, or we're trying to push them in a direction to do something lucrative. And so what I have found over the years working with high achievers, doing work on purpose and personal branding, just like coaching work, a lot of people just aren't really clear on who they are, what they want, what they really want to do. They're clear on the skill set that they are able to kind of access in a more powerful way than other people. So they're clear on what they can do better in a work context, what they can do faster, more efficiently, just with a higher aptitude. But they're not necessarily clear on how they want to use that aptitude in service to their purpose, their bigger goals, the causes that matter to them, the audiences that matter most to them, the impact that they want to make in the world. There's a disconnect between what I can do and what I'm here to do. And so in the Rest Revolution, a part of kind of coming home to yourself and getting that rest is really getting in touch with what you really want to be doing with your talents. And again, coming back into alignment, because going back to that first question that you asked me, and I told you that, burnout is not simply overworking. It is sometimes kind of working in the wrong lane, working out of alignment. And so when you right size your ambition, you really do a self inquiry. You ask yourself and you get honest with yourself about
Hmm.
what you really want to be doing. And that's, I know you were laughing, right? Because it's like, I gotta be honest. Yes, you gotta be honest. Like, we gotta stop lying to ourselves. We gotta be real here and be like, you know what? I'm in this job where I gotta talk to people, and I don't like people. I just want to be by myself.
Well, okay.
Right.
If you're if that honest moment with yourself leads to wait, I don't like people, that might require some big shifts because in
Yes.
being serious, because there are some roles where okay, you're not really working with people in teams. You have your tasks and you
Mm-hmm.
enjoy it and you are good at those tasks. Then there are times when people, they get energy from that. They need to be in people with
Yep.
people. They need to be seen and operate as a leader because they want to guide and lead to success in that way. My laughter came not from the nervousness around honesty, but just thinking about some of those honest conversations I've had with myself at different points in my career, where the thing that you need, the thing that is the difference between what you're doing and what you're here to do, as you said, sometimes that delta is very big, but sometimes that delta is very small, and it's just a sidestep. So
Mm-hmm.
I always bring it to, there's always the moment when you think, you know what, I'm going to stop doing this and go pivot and go all the way over here. I've worked with people who worked in the communication space and they turned around and said, you know what, I'm opening a landscaping business.
Mm-hmm.
Or I met someone, or I was working with someone early in my career, like many people, she was impacted by layoffs.
Yep.
And she decided she's going to go a completely different path. She was on a PR and communications track. She decided to go back to school. She became a designer. She started working in that space. She did the whole eat, pray, love piece. Found somebody, got married, started exercising, doing things. She changed her entire life. And sometimes that's the path that you're on, and other times it's a real honest conversation to say, all right, I can do this. I'm good at this. I keep getting the promotions for this. I've been rewarded for this. But is it fulfilling me or is it draining me in terms of the work that you're doing? And sometimes it's taking one or two steps to the left or the right that will put you on the right path and the right track. So that's where the laughter came from because sometimes it's not all that big. Sometimes the thing you're supposed to do is right there in the company you're in, but it's a different role. It's a different job. And that might require you to show up differently, to speak to different skills you have. There's different things we might want to talk about in that aspect.
Well, I'll say too that, and it's not necessarily like always there. This is the thing. The thing I'm doing completely drains me, and the thing that I want to do is just is perfect and way over there. Sometimes it's not. I have to completely quit this thing in order
Mhm.
to access that thing. And as you were talking, it just made me think about literally this journey that I'm on to write. Right. So, how this book, The Rest Revolution, came about was essentially me being honest with myself and answering the call to write my own words. I had been doing executive coaching work, some storytelling and ghostwriting for executives, very good at it, really enjoy it, paid really well. But there was this dissonance because I wasn't showing up publicly with my own words for myself. And so I asked myself in 2020, 2021, what would it look like if I got out there more publicly with my own words? And so I didn't, shut down my business and say, bye, clients. I am now a writer. I started small. I started, taking workshops and just getting into community with other writers to figure out what are my writing ideas. I keep saying I want to write, but it wasn't like I had this big story that I needed to tell. I just knew that I had a hunger to get back in touch with the words I have to share and to start sharing them. And so that first step was just getting in an environment where other people were tackling and wrestling with that same hunger so that it normalized it for my nervous system in a way and allowed me to just kind of like open up that part of my brain and being that was more in touch with the writer side of myself. And
Mhm.
it's, it was a slow process kind of, but it was community. Then it was like, oh, I have an idea. I have an idea for an article. And it was a pitch that got rejected, and then another, and then one that got accepted, then an article, and then another article, and then, oh my gosh, a fellowship, and then a contributor opportunity, and then a book deal. And this is not replacing everything else I'm doing, but it is adding to the pot, and it is fueling me in a way that I had to give myself permission to be fueled, if that makes sense.
I want to come back to permission, but before we get there, there's a piece of this that I think is important to identify. You knew you had these writing skills. You were there early. And then you pivoted, and then you decided, okay, I'm going to bring back this very core piece of who I am and what I do, my purpose, and the purpose I want to fulfill. What if you don't necessarily know that this is the skill you want to tap? Can you talk us through how you might start to take stock of some of the skills that you have? Because sometimes if you're feeling burnt out, or if you feel it coming on, you're not necessarily thinking about, okay, well, what are the skills that I have? What else could I be doing? You're kind of still in your feeling, and you're feeling stuck maybe. So what advice do you have for people who want to maybe identify and assess the strengths that they have, or any transferable skills that might help them either take a step to the side or think about a new path altogether?
This is Package Your Genius 101, right? So for those of you who don't know, as an extension of my personal branding business, work, and coaching, I have a whole platform around packaging your genius. I have a book, a workbook, and I have lectured on this process for many years. But the very first step in that package your genius process is to reflect on seasons in your life, periods of your career where you have had moments of feeling completely energized by your work, and you want to assess what were you doing, what skills were you using, who were you around, were you alone, were you working in groups, were you leading young people, were you speaking on a stage, were you organizing, motivating? Write down as many verbs that come to mind to that moment of energy. And if you can come up with 2 or 3 moments, that's even better. And the moments piece is not mine. I got that from Michael Bungay Stanier. He wrote a book called Do More Great Work. And he talks about this concept of peak moments. So in Package Your Genius, I encourage people to identify and isolate their memories of peak moments, right? And then think about tear it apart. What are the components of a peak moment? So that's the first piece. The second piece is, and that's the internal piece, what am I energized by? Who am I energized by? What activities am I energized? What am I doing when I feel energized? That's the me part.
Okay.
The world mirrors back to you a lot of good information as well. So the world will show you how they are getting value from your skills in the form of requests for your support or thank you, right? So when people are thanking you, what is that thank you that you hear time and time again, especially from different people who may not even be connected, or people who are in different aspects of your life, right? So if at home someone is saying, oh wow, thank you for really explaining that, you simplified that for me, now I understand. And if at work people are saying the same thing, that's something you want to pay attention to. The third piece of this is, the gold is when the peak moment kind of activities, and then those thank yous and that, asking for your help, when what you're energized by and what the world is showing you they value you for, when they intersect, that's where the gold is.
Okay. So that's where the Venn diagram comes together.
Yeah.
These two things. have to use my PowerPoint slide graphics in my head. Okay,
Yep.
These two things come together, and now you're starting to see this is a zone of opportunity for you to explore.
Because that's the thing. I think it's important to note the overlapping, because we all have things that we're really good at that people kind of maybe exploit for their own purposes. And so it's critical that the thing that people are asking for your help with or thanking you for is actually something that it energizes you to provide. If you want to kind of move forward, because otherwise you're just going to end up resenting doing this thing that, yeah, you're really good at it, but you don't even want to do it, or you don't want to do it this way, or in service of this audience. And so the overlap is key, because I think so many times people get close to that skill set that they could be using, but they don't really think through all the different components of, well, wait a minute, do I even yes, this is lucrative. Yes, people want it and need it, but is this something that I am going to be energized showing up to do day after day?
Thank you for that. And as you were starting to talk through it, it brought me back to that point on permission. Because, as you said, you may be good at something, people realize you're good at it, but that thing is not the thing that energizes you, but that's the thing you get the most asks for. And you do it well, so you get a lot of thank yous. How do you maybe get to a point where you can start to give yourself the permission to say, I'm going to be different. I'm going to do something different. I know you like to ask me for A, but I'm focusing on B.
I think it starts with what you're saying, permission. I think your ability to tell someone, no, I am moving in a different direction, I'm not offering that right now, or I'm focusing on this right now. I may come back to that other thing, but right now I'm focusing on this. It stems from your ability to grant yourself the room to explore what that looks like. So kind of going back to my example of wanting to get my words out there publicly, for me, I reached a point where the discomfort of ignoring that hunger was so great that it was so uncomfortable to not see what was on the other side of that. And that was how I gave myself the permission. And so you may sense that for yourself, this rising sensation of frustration, impatience, just there's something out there you want to grasp and you aren't doing it. And I think that coming to terms with, not to be morbid, but life is short, right? Life is short. And not even life. One of the things that I've been reflecting on a lot lately as a midlife professional is not even so much that life itself is short, but this moment of vitality, mental acuity, cognitive function, even the physical energy to flit about the world and share ideas. That's not necessarily something that I will have, to the last day, right? It's likely that's an even shorter window than life itself, right? And so when you think about it in those terms, what are you waiting for? And that was really what I asked myself. I'm like, okay, Amanda, you've been saying you want to write more and share more. So when are you going to do it? When you're 70? And not to say that doing it at 70 is bad. If you're 70, do it. But I'm not 70.
And why wait?
Yeah, why wait? Especially and the way I kind of negotiated with myself was, all right, well, let me just carve out this room for this class. We'll start with the class. And we'll see what happens. The class is at night, 6:00. That's not cutting into anything, any client obligation during the day. It's once a week for 6 weeks. You can do that. And so once I kind of started with that, it was easier to kind of increase my capacity to hold space for more. And so I think that, life is short, but also start small. That's how you can start to give yourself room. You don't have to change it all today. You don't have to say, all right, I'm quitting this industry and moving over here completely. You can take a little aspect, a little chunk, a project, right? You can start small to test drive and see if this place that you think you want to go is even where you want to go.
I
Get some
think
evidence, get some data points.
get some evidence and some data points. And again, and maybe this is a hint of where I go back and forth. I'm still stuck on the permission piece. I want to specifically call it out because as you think about age, I too am approaching that age where you start to think about, oh, well, how much time do I have for X? I remember in the beginning of my career, it was like, well, how much time will it take me to do this? Not how much
Mhm.
time do I have left to do
Yes,
this?
that's
And
the
so
shift.
you start to think about the shift. But when you get into this midlife space, a lot of people, they have aging parents, they have kids, they have other obligations. So even if you're not on either of those spectrums, you have other things that you feel like are requirements or things that are, encroaching on the time that you would have, the headspace you would have to be thinking through these things. I just want to say and put it out there, like Amanda said, you start small and you start to think, give yourself permission at minimum to carve that space out. Because I think that's also a mental block too. How do I start to get my schedule set up so that I can have this space and time? And really and truly, it's like, all right, this life is only but so long. And what are you doing what you're here to do? That to me has been made a little easier when you think about what it gives you, which is joy. You get a
Mm,
sense of joy and fulfillment. So, can we talk about that for a little bit? Because I know that that's something that you cover in the book.
yes.
Um, it's a key part of the rest revolution, and I want us to spend a little bit of time unpacking in your POV. Can you explain how and why joy is so essential when we're redefining those career paths and ambitions? Because there's got to be a reason why like that is something we're moving towards, or we should be looking to move towards.
So the joy connection really starts with or goes back to energy. And especially if you are someone who is in the throes of burnout, you're exhausted, you're uninspired, you are wondering what comes next, you are joyless. Um, Being in a place like that is exhausting, both physically and mentally and creatively, when you are not engaged really in what is kind of taking up most of your time on a day-to-day basis. That's really demoralizing and can really deplete you. It's almost like it ages you, right? Like if you think about things that age a person in a career or professional context, having a lack of joy almost like burns you out faster. And so the joy is generative. It creates energy for you. And so when you are in the midst of burnout, you desperately need the energy to kind of pull yourself out and see yourself through to the other side. And I think that if we are talking about setting ourselves up for pathways that don't bring us back to burnout, focusing on what is good work for us, purposeful work for us, joy creating work for us, we're essentially hacking. We're hacking ambition, we're hacking productivity, because if you can land on the thing that makes you joyful, time goes faster. It's just a lighter lift. It's not the heavy lift that slogging through a day full of tasks that depletes you is. And so you may even find yourself doing more when you're doing joyful work. You're able to
Mhm.
do more of it than when you're doing work that's out of alignment with what does bring you joy. And so while it sounds a bit indulgent to say, oh, you should do the thing you love to do, it's really in some ways a hack, because if I'm doing what I love and it brings me joy, that's going to create energy for me. So I'm going to stay out of burnout or get out of burnout. And it's just going to be, work is going to be something that enhances my life, not simply depletes it.
Definitely, definitely. All right. So we've started to identify options for how we're going to find those skills. We're giving ourselves permission to explore it and start in small ways. We know a little bit of the why and how it should feel as we're doing it. We're getting that joyful message. But at some point, though, we do have to explore where we find that stopping point. So let's talk about rest and what
Mhm.
that means. So we're in the midst of the rest revolution. What role does rest play in clarifying our next steps? And why is it so important to build it into our daily lives? I'm thinking about really in that moment when you feel maybe the burnout's coming on, or even after experiencing the burnout, you have a great articulation of rest. So I want you to talk to us about it.
Thank you. So, one of the things I want to say is when I talk about rest, I'm not talking simply about going on vacation or, you know, doing this big thing that requires a ton of money or a ton of time. Those are great. And if you have the PTO, please take it. Don't just let it accrue. Get away, get out of your day to day environment for sure. However, I think what we really need to do a better job of in this country is finding ways to embed small moments of stillness and rest into our lives every single day. And so for me, that could be me writing in my journal, or I listen to a 20-minute sound bath just to kind of check in with myself, and I do some deep breathing while I'm doing that. On a perfect day, I make it over to Rock Creek Park and I walk through the forest and just am, enveloped in nature and can kind of get in touch with myself and stillness in that way. Doing that on a daily basis, however small or grand the practice is for you, it's like you are adding money to a high yield savings account. You can literally feel the impacts building up in your nervous system over time. And so I encourage you, like, if there's a way for you to embrace a daily practice, and again, I think the theme of this call is start small. Like, even if it's literally 5 minutes of deep breathing. I just was texting with my brother and he was telling me how stressed he was about some things. My grandmother is ill and we're having to kind of like, make some last minute travel plans. And I was like, breathe, breathe. 5 minutes. If you just slow your breathing down, take some deep inhales in, some deep exhales out, and just kind of, you'll feel your body kind of coming back online. And so you asked me about rest's role in this reimagining of work and ambition. And I think that we discount the importance of tuning out the noise of both the world, friends, colleagues, the news, the 24-hour news cycle. All of that information is weighing on our systems and it is cluttering our field, when what we really need to do is tune into ourselves and to get that clarity. So remember when I talked about you getting in touch with what has been energizing to you, you have to stop and pause to even be able to access the memories of that. Yep. And to, really get back in touch with what made me feel energized. This is not something you can do in a crowded, loud room with lots of people yelling at you. You've got to get still. And so rest provides a way to almost like drop down into your subconscious and access the things that are like, underneath all the clothes on the floor in your room, right? Like, you know what I mean? It's like if the world's information is cluttering this space and you think of that as like a big laundry heap, underneath all of that is the truth of you, and you can only get to the bottom of the pile through rest. I have been fortunate enough to attend and be in retreat with actual rest practitioners. Like, I'm a journalist, I'm a coach, I'm not a rest practitioner, but I have been held in space with rest practitioners who can instruct you on, okay, we're going to do this meditation, you're going to lie down, you're going to, I'm going to talk or say these things while you're resting, and then when we resurface, let's see what is there. And it is powerful what the mind is able to access after a period of intentional rest. It just is. And so again, going back to joy as a hack, rest is a hack. If you're unclear, if you don't know what the idea is, rest, whether that is sleeping, or for me, the deepest rest is a walk through the forest. I have gotten some of the most clarified answers to challenges I'm facing after a 2-mile hike through the woods. Like everything that was weighing on me or confusing me or I had questions about, it's like, oh, that's the answer. Duh. Like it just becomes clear. And so it sounds woo woo and it sounds like, oh, okay, whatever, Amanda, to the unpracticed. But I know there's some people nodding their heads who know what I'm talking about. And I know you know too, because we've gone on a hike or two. And it's like we always have the best like brainstorms.
And see, well, that's the thing. Where we get into a dangerous cycle is okay, we're resting, but we're working. We're just like,
Mm.
oh, there's a purpose.
But remember, joyful, energizing, doesn't feel like work,
There you
right?
go. There you go.
So give
I
yourself permission to be joyful. Like that's fun. We're
it
not.
is,
It's like we're doing that in our off time. It's not like you were on the clock or this is a meeting. We're brainstorming, coming up with things. Because that's what we're unlocking our creativity through connection and through rest. So that's like
yeah.
a double whammy because connection is another piece. But y'all got to get the book to read about all the components.
Yes, yes. Can I give away all the things? But I think again, as the informal theme of the session, starting small, I think it's important to just note the range of things you talked about, from a sound bath just to 5 minutes of deep breathing to going to a true retreat and
Mm-hmm.
exploring it. Part of that is figuring out how it fits in every day, because for a couple of years I got in the cycle of okay, we're gonna do all of this for 11 months, 11 and a half months, but then those 2 weeks of vacation, we'll take that and then you really disconnect. And then you come back to it and it's like, well, I have a whole nother year. So
Yeah.
this doesn't work. And you start to figure out, okay, you do need to include it on a more regular basis. You do need to find the different ways with the varying times that you have available to you. How do you give yourself that moment of rest? How do you give yourself that break to really get to the clarity? And I
It's
think
kind of
that's the
like
key piece.
it's like food, right? Like we don't say, "Oh my gosh, I'm really busy at work right now, but in 2 weeks when this project ends, I'll eat something."
Yeah.
you know,
Not
it's
gonna
like
work.
it's not gonna work. You figure it out, you build it in, you get it done, and rest is a similar way. And I think to your point about you spend a whole year and then you escape for 2 weeks. I don't know about you, but in the times that I have been on this super intense grind of a schedule and then planned to take a break, it took me days before I even felt like I could really start to, like, my shoulders were dropping. And
Hmm.
so by the time I finally started to relax, it was time to come home, you know?
Yes.
And so I think that speaks to the need of us embedding this and giving ourselves, that's the second thing, permission. Giving ourselves permission to rest daily, because rest requires practice just like anything else. And if you are not used to getting still and, calming yourself and just being in a rested state, it's really difficult for you to get your nervous system and your body in a place to even be able to access the benefits of the time you're taking or the rest that you're trying to get.
Indeed, indeed. Okay, so let's move forward to this. There's another piece to this now. So we're talking about also this identification of these skills and this purpose. So we found some of this. Now we need to think about how you actually make a pivot. And it can be
Mm.
tough when you're pivoting. You may have resolved within yourself, this is what I'm doing. But now you've got to signal this out to other people. You've got to tell other people, this is what's happening. How do you recommend that people start to communicate the change that they're making? And they've got to do it with confidence. So even if the shift is big or small, how do they start to confidently communicate to their network that I'm changing?
Mm. That's a good one. I think repetition is big. Repetition is a big piece. I was I was joking the other day about how I do get a number of requests now to talk about mental health, to talk about self-care, to talk about rest. Obviously, I have this new book, but James, I think you recall there was a time when if I was getting a speaking request, it was about personal branding and how to stand out and how to position your expertise. Those are all things I still do and can help with. But because once I started to put my words out there publicly and landed on this beat of burnout and rest and overwork and ambition, and how are we moving forward after the big clarifying moment that was the pandemic for many people. And I just started sharing, my articles, my thoughts. When I would read something that, someone else wrote that I found fascinating, I'd share that and share my thoughts around it. I think it's not as hard as you may think. If you're trying to pivot what you're known for, what you have to figure out is, all right, what is it that I want to be known for? What are some of those keywords? Who are some of the people that are in the space? And what do I have to say about this thing that I want to be known for? What is my approach? Do I have expert insights to share? Maybe you don't, because maybe this is a new pivot. But you know what you can do? You can talk to experts, you can interview them, and you can share your findings. James, I don't remember if you recall, of course you do, because I interviewed you. That series I had, Test Drive My Job. I don't know if I ever told you, this was years ago, when I had a PR blog. And the reason I started that series, it was called Test Drive My Job. I would interview public relations and communications professionals to get an insider view on what their days were like, what work did they do, how long had they been doing it, what did it take to get to where they were. And the reason that I started that series, in addition to the fact that I understood, the way to build a blog was to have like regular content. I was like coming up with different verticals for this blog. But my curiosity and a bit of insecurity was that, I went to school for English and history. I was an English history major, and then was dabbling in journalism. And so when I made the switch to PR and comms, I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I was like, well, let me just talk to people. There's so many different types of comms and PR. There's investor relations, media relations, nonprofit PR people. There's agency people, corporate people. What do these people do, and what does it take? And if I were to shift into one of these arenas, like I want to test drive it, right? Like that was the whole concept. And so I started interviewing people, met PR people, found them online, and sent them my questions, or called them and asked them my questions, and started publishing these interviews on my blog. And guess what? I become this expert.
Now you're getting into the thought leadership lane.
But that's what I'm saying.
Thought leader.
I want to let people know, like, I think sometimes it's daunting, especially when you're trying to make a pivot. That's still that strategy. That is an easy way to start aligning your name and your personal brand to the thing that you want to be known for, that you're not yet, ready to embrace. So talking to people, getting in community and conversation with the people who you want to be considered in the same grouping as, asking them, what does it take? Convening them, hosting them for events or for interviews like this one. Just talking to them and learning from them, and then taking a nugget from what you learned and moving that forward in your own journey. And so I can't tell you how many people I interviewed who sparked something for me in that journey of, wow, maybe I should try out PR from this angle. Maybe I should look into working with clients around this. I had a demonstrated skill set around digital and social media, and I knew I was good because people were always coming to me and asking me for my help with how could they stand out online, how could they leverage online tools better, how could they promote their independent practices. And so I knew that I was onto something because of the requests that I got. But in terms of like really building my name and marrying my name, I got active in the industry associations that governed PR. I interviewed other people in PR to just kind of share my findings. And whenever I would learn something, I would immediately teach it back to my community. And so I think that you're really in an advantage. You have an advantage when you're pivoting because you likely have a ton of curiosity about the thing and the direction that is like the new frontier, right? And
Yeah.
so use that curiosity to like explore, ask questions, but report back, right? And as you're reporting back, here's what I'm finding, here's what I'm learning, here's who I met, and here's what they said. The more you talk about this new frontier and you kind of marry it to your name, your brand, your profile, etc., the more people are going to start thinking of you around that new topic. And so that's kind of how we pivot, how we become known for something else. But that also opens up opportunities for us to do work because people will start coming to you because they will say, oh, you're the person who knows how to do this X, or you're the person who is plugged into Y. Let's talk about how, we can make some things happen. Or let's talk about this opportunity we have at our company. Maybe this would be something you'd be interested in.
I mean, I think that makes perfect sense. And a key part of it is it wasn't just one thing that you were
Yeah,
doing. So you sought the community,
I
and you can
did.
see this all the time. You find the community. If you're not finding the community, you're building the community where it doesn't necessarily exist.
Yeah.
But in the midst of that, you are also studying.
Yes.
Somebody wants to be an artist. Well, you have to create, but you
Mm-hmm.
also should be engaging with a community of creators.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to learn from each other. You're going to see things that inspire you, all the things you said. But then when you're talking about communicating the change, you didn't just one day decide, I have a new title. You
Mm-hmm.
were doing things and communicating what you were doing,
Yep.
communicating what others were doing in the space, your POVs on that, your perspectives on that. And that is the start of the small piece steps on the journey
Mm-hmm.
of I'm now shifting from this to that, or I'm adding, because sometimes, as you mentioned, it's not a full shift, but
Yeah.
you are adding a new focus, and this is where your time is going to over time, be more developed and grow. But it takes steps, and I think it takes doing. It is not solely a communications exercise. And
It's
I
it's
think a
true.
lot of times, as executives start to go through this, they have to think, what am I doing? And sometimes it's changing what you're doing in order to change how you're seen and how that brand might shift as well.
I think another piece of this is because it can feel very permanent. So back to keeping with the theme of starting small, you can start small and you can also commit to a season,
Hmm.
right? So like this is one of the little strategies I would offer people in Packager Genius Academy around podcasting. Because I'd say, podcasts are a great way to really, align your brand to a new topic, to carve out your lane, to be found in search because podcasts, the places where podcasts are found are like search engines, right? And so invariably people would say, oh, I can't commit. I don't want to, what if I don't like it? I don't want to get started. Then I quit. And I would say, what if you produce and record a capsule, a podcast capsule? What if you think of your 6 topics, your 6 episodes, or your 12 episodes, and you commit to just recording those 6 or those 12, and make sure that they are keyword rich and they are really tied to this new lane that you are exploring, this new frontier that you want to now be known for. Whether you interview people, the experts, as I mentioned before, or you just talk about like the 6 things you know. You don't have to know everything, but if you know 6 things related to this new lane, record those episodes and put it up and walk away. And hey, you might find that doing that exercise, you really loved the rhythm you got into recording the podcast capsule. But if you can kind of mentally say, well, you know what? I'm committing to this capsule. I may continue it. I may do a second season. I may not. But I am putting a stake in the ground here for my expertise. No matter what, I can commit to doing this one time. And I think there's guidance there for making career pivots. If you can say, I'm going to explore for a season, I'm going to come up with the 6 or 12 actions I'm going to take to just see if I can get any traction in this new lane. And then, we'll see what happens. And if that doesn't work, maybe I'll try something else. I'll go back to the drawing board. At the very least, I still have the thing I'm doing now. But I think if we have to begin to divest from this idea that like everything is permanent, everything is forever. Nothing is forever. And the more you can see the role that you have or the career that you're in, and like the jobs, the projects, etc., that you're working on are a seasonal assignment, and that season is going to change, and that assignment may or may not serve you in the new season, so it's okay to switch to something that does. I think the better off we will all be.
Okay. I feel like that in and of itself is a word that needs to be boxed up. Maybe put on a poster and I can put it on my wall. But I have been on the journey with you, so I know some of the phases, but you have mentioned season a few times, and I want to make sure that the audience understands that there's a special meaning that you've applied to this that relates to how you think and what you do. So can you give us this is a two-parter. Can you give us a little bit of an overview on seasons for one, and for two, because winter is coming,
Ah,
if we can talk about what that really means, because that's a very important season. So I'd
yes.
love for you to expand on both.
I think you are hinting towards purposescaping,
Yes. Yes.
which is my philosophy. It's just kind of a lens that I look at work and life, really everything through, and that is simply that we can track, um, we can track the movements and the cycles of our lives to um, the cycles in nature, the seasons in nature. Not necessarily that like our lives are changing with the seasons, but there is a time of spring planting to every career journey. There's a time of summer growth to your parenting journey. There's a time of fall harvest to a business or birthing a book concept, right? And then there is a time for winter rest and reflection. And one of the things that I talk about in the book is this concept of repeatedly skipping winter. So purposescaping really takes into account like how does each season apply to you living an optimal life, because most of us want to just bloom, right? Like we want to harvest, we want
Yep.
to see the evidence and to always be shining, but like you need to be a beginner. You need to rest and reflect. You need to just like kind of have seasons when you're just kind of putting your the pedal down and you're growing before something is evident to the outside world. And so that winter, repeatedly skipping winter, is the concept of thinking that like we have to always be providing some sort of big win, achievement, evidence, making all the money, like in that season of I'm reaping all the rewards. I'm reaping all the
Mm-hmm.
rewards. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm never kind of taking myself out of the spotlight, taking myself offline to, you know, to shut down, to sleep, to rest, to reflect on, okay, based on the past 3 or 4 cycles, what do I want to keep moving into the next planting cycle? Do I like the harvest, that I got? Do I like what I planted? Do I want to double down on that, increase it? Do I want to find something new altogether to plant? Do I need new tools? Do I need to pack up and move to a new plot of land? Like, what do I need to do? And so we get so caught up in wanting to just harvest, 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 that we forget the importance of that season of winter rest. And that is what inevitably leads us to burnout, because I think skipping winter is not just it doesn't just lead to physical exhaustion. It leads to a lack of clarity because we're not taking time to assess, to reflect, to get clear on, how do we even feel about what we're harvesting?
Mm-hmm.
Do I even need all of this? Do I want it?
Yes.
Was the juice worth the squeeze? Or I could have had a VA? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
No, I completely understand all of that, and I thank you for walking through that, because that's another framework that you can apply to think through this
Yes.
concept of rest. Because we're talking about burnout, people feeling it and what they do afterwards. Sometimes you haven't really approached that yet. You're not there, but it's on the horizon. You're feeling something's off. And you can use that purposecaping approach and that lens to think through it. And for people who are thinking about that pivot, all that you just said about thinking about those seasons, those are good things. So you
There's a
might
whole chapter in the book. It's actually the longest chapter in the book on purposecaping. It's in the smack dab in the middle of the book. And it is, I honestly, I'm like, did I write that super long chapter as a precursor to the purposecaping book? Like, is that the next book? Just
perhaps
straight purposecaping?
because and I mean, I think we're nearing the end of the hour here, so I want to just kind of put a good wrapper on it. I know there are a couple questions out there that you will
Oh,
get
you
to,
got
but
questions?
there are a couple.
Okay.
There are a few people who are saying they're having trouble with the link, so I've tried to troubleshoot that a little bit. But what I want to make sure that everybody gets before we have to close out is that we're in an interesting season with people thinking about those questions you were wrestling with. Is the juice worth the squeeze with what I'm doing? Do I want that? Even if what I have is good, do I want to do something else? And so maybe if you could leave us with, two or three things that people should start doing right now, aside from ordering the Rest Revolution, two or three things they could start doing to get themselves into that seasonal cycle because it's the end of the year. So many ways as we might be having different feelings or feeling different ways about what October, November, December has in store for us, there are some things we probably should do as we close out the year, knowing that some people's time frames come down. There's a little bit more time to breathe. We got Thanksgiving and Christmas and different holidays, and you might get a few hours to mentally take care of yourself and think differently. What should they do to get ready for this season and this winter that's coming?
Well, they could take a little mini winter reflection retreat with some questions that I'll just share with you. I love a good prompt. I love a good question. I live by them. I really feel like the questions are the answers. But some questions you can ask yourself in terms of a year-end reflection. Start with, okay, when I look at my January to my December of this year, like what were some of those peak moments did I have any? Right? Like, did I
Hmm.
have any peak moments? If so, what were they? What was I doing? What made them stand out for me? Also, what are some of the things that I found most draining for myself? As I think of this, I'm looking, of course I don't have my tools right at my, but I'm thinking about the planner, the Brand with Purpose planner. So at the end of the beginning of the month and the end of each month, I have these questions to help you just really remember what was going on a month by month basis. But if you're doing this at the end of the year, you want to think about, like, again, what energized me, what drained me, what do I want to double down on, who do I want to double down on. Like, one of the cool things about doing that on a monthly basis is you start to see the themes, right?
Yes.
Like, of the in those answers, right? So when I would write in my planner, okay, what were some of the most energizing moments this month, it would always revolve around friendship and connection. And so it's like, oh, okay, that's definitely something that is bringing me energy. I want to double down on that. And so it's not impossible to do in one fell swoop at the end of the year. But it's better if you kind of have a bit of data from over and one of the things you might be able to do, I've started doing this sometimes when I need to jog my brain, is to look through my camera roll
Hmm.
to see, like, what were some of the moments I captured that I deemed worthy of capturing throughout the year, to just remember what have I been doing. And so, yeah, what energized you? What were those peak moments? What drained you? Who energized you? Who drained you? What work projects and tasks did I really enjoy? And then another question, it's not the easiest one to answer, and you really will have to get still and access some rest to answer this honestly, is, what am I hungry for?
Hmm.
Like, and what I mean by that is, like, what is missing? What what am I not giving myself permission to explore, to experience, to access, to prioritize? What could potentially take my quality of life just 5% up, what could potentially increase the joy I experience on a week to week, month to month, year to year basis? So, like, I know for us doing our monthly brunch, that's always a high point, right? So it's like we had to go from, oh, this is something that we just kind of do if we remember, to really committing to it and saying,
Hmm.
okay, second Sunday, you know,
Yes.
we're
Gonna
doing it.
spend the time to do this. And
Yes.
I think that that is such a powerful question. And I'm looking to the sky, and I saw as you were thinking through it, you're closing your eyes to think
Mm-hmm.
about it, because to me, this is the key benefit that you're getting from the exercises that are in the book about rest. Because you can ask that question, and I'm sure you can generate an answer. But to find the truest, the
The
most
truth.
honest answer,
Yes.
you got to take a moment and you've
Mm-hmm.
got to go within yourself, and
You
you're
got
going to
to
need
tune in.
rest to get to
Yes.
that level of clarity. That's where it's going to come from. And so I want to thank you for taking this time to share all of this with us. What I would love for you to do is to tell us where we can buy the book and where we can access all of the goods that you have shared with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me, James, for sharing your platform and just for being a champion of my work over all these years and a true friend to myself and my family. So thank you for that. The book is everywhere that books are sold. So it's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, you know, the usual suspects, Bookshop. But it's also like on Target.com. I was just, you know,
Hey.
putzing around the internet looking for it, and I found it on Target's website, and I feel like it's a few others. But if you go to the book's website, which is therestrevolutionbook.com, I've got links to a few of those retailers, but I'm pretty sure wherever you are seeking to buy your books, you can find it. So it's The Rest Revolution: How to Reclaim Your Rhythm and Conquer Burnout When Overworking Has Become the Norm. It releases officially tomorrow, November 13th. We're so excited. I can't wait to be in more conversations like this one about the principles in the book and to see how folks are activating those principles in their lives. So,
Excellent. Well, thank you. And I hope everybody who was able to watch and join considers joining the Rest Revolution and
yes,
potentially
join
sharing it
in.
with others. Holidays coming, you might know somebody who could use some of these
I'm
ideas. So
sure
I hope
you do know somebody.
you. All right. Well, thank you so much, Amanda.
Absolutely. Thank you, James.